There are many, many ways that they're trying to rig the science in the first place or move it in a certain direction and then repeat. You know, a principle of PR, you have to see something 7 times and then it's true. And I encourage folks to really think about this because we're inundated with all kinds of PR, with the election as a good example. And if we're hearing something again and again and again and again from lots of different sources that seem disconnected, suddenly it feels true. And I think we're hearing that and seeing that, and I study that, so it really drives me crazy. But when we look through the example with the bees, you'll see what I mean about how they do it. So the major thing, the greatest PR coup of the pesticide industry in relation to the bees was reframing the debate to focus on the Varroa mite. So it's the mites causing the bees to die. That's a little mite there, the orange guy. This is actually a sculpture, a huge sculpture that is on display at Bayer's $12 million Bee Care Center. So you go to the Bee Care Center, you learn all about the mites and the problems with the mites. And of course, there was also a lot of studies that come out about how mites are the problem. And if the studies don't say the mites are enough of a problem, then some of those researchers are hearing from Bayer to say, or Syngenta in this case, to say, go back and look at your data again until the mites are really a problem. So that was reported in the New York Times in 2017. This is a quote from a scientist in a 2017 New York Times story by Danny Hakim. So Dr. James Cresswell, he was hired by Syngenta. He's a bee expert from the University of Exeter. And he was skeptical of pesticides' role in hurting bees. But when he did his research for Syngenta, his findings were not what the company expected to hear because they undercut the role of the mite. So Syngenta began pressing him to consider new data and a different approach. Looking back at his interactions with the company, Dr. Cresswell said in a recent interview that Syngenta clearly has got an agenda. And in an email, he summed up that agenda. It's the Varroa, stupid. Varroa is a mite, the little orange mite in the picture before, that is a pest to bees. What the science is showing is that the neonicotinoids play a role in weakening bees, making them more susceptible to the mite. But what you're going to hear if you go to, thanks. What you'll hear, that's better. What you'll hear if you go to, any number of bee meetings, bee conferences, bee summits, is all about the mite and very little about the pesticides. You'll hear denial about the pesticides. So it's the mite, it's the mite, it's the mite. The reason I've heard of people going into meetings like literally chanting that, there is a tremendous effort to really pin all the blame on this little mite. So then they're pushing this message, it's the Varroa, stupid, through all kinds of channels and a huge array of third-party groups, front groups, spin groups, media partnerships, academics who work with them. In the story, Li Fang reported that one of the greatest successes of their whole program is the influence they have on the leading bee scientists in the world. And they put a tremendous amount of effort into that, into how people speak, coaching them, media training them, and getting them out there, paying them to speak, etc. So this was a headline from Science 2.0, which is a science website, Science-y. I call it a Science-y website. It's connected to a group called the American Council on Science and Health, which is paid by Monsanto to deny harm to bees. Deny bees are dying, deny it's pesticides, deny chemicals cause cancer, and shame, silence, try to discredit scientists, journalists, and public interest groups who raise concerns. They are one of many, many groups that fill that role. And they've been very successful. They're all over the news. They're often in the top of the Google search. So, okay, not only that, though, this was reported in Lee's story, a PBS series. So think about the most trusted media brands in America. PBS might be one of them. So there was a PBS series that was underwritten by CropLife America that discussed mites, but not the pesticides, as a factor for harming bees. And 538, that very popular website by the former New York Times statistician, had a mini documentary. It played at Sundance, focused, quote, exclusively on discussing mites and no mention of pesticide stressors. So it's just, we're, again, hearing it from all sorts of different ways. Okay, they cast themselves as the solution to the bee problem with the $12 million Bee Care Center with the huge sculpture of the mite, splashy websites touting leadership on the bee issue, bee care tours, and they hand out huge checks to beekeepers. And then they even have a children's coloring book, Toby the Bees, in which a friendly beekeeper tells young Toby the bees are getting sick, but not to worry. It's just a problem with mites, but there's a special medicine made by Bayer to make bees healthy. So the problems and the solutions are fitting into this model of whatever makes profits for these corporations is what works. The Jeff Simmons talk, the drugs for animals, genetically engineered animals, we need more, more, more. But what they don't tell you, what he certainly doesn't tell you, and I really encourage folks to, if you want to really see the extent of it and passion behind it, to watch Jeff Simmons' videos. What they don't tell you is that they're already producing more than we need to feed people. But it's not going to people because it's not the right kinds of foods. It's not where it needs to be grown. They're growing food to feed corporate profits. And so this, I think, is an example that the bees die, but we can make a medicine to fix them. We can genetically engineer bees. We can make robotic bees. We can make mites. These are the sort of solutions that you'll hear discussed seriously